There's rare moments where I have the opportunity to go in depth about the mind, to understand what a thought is, to think about meditation, spirituality, yoga.
For me, it is 100% an anchor to my day. So usually I would meditate in the morning and not, well, I should rephrase that, not just the morning, because like...
All those interesting things in life that we don't take the time to breathe.
In sales in some capacity. And so, you know, that ability to maybe sense and judge what is happening in a situation, you could argue comes from the stillness that you find within a yoga practice like that.
And to think about why we do certain things.
Having the regular practice, it definitely starts your day in a great way, you know? So it kind of anchors me in that respect.
What led to the thought processes that we have?
I guess, I mean, I'm going to relate it to me as to what I might do, because I think it can be different for everybody.
And how do we live a more fulfilling life in the midst of stress and chaos and fear?
You can still offer a lot of value to people, even in a small business, you know?
So this is a podcast about peace, serenity, home. No idea where it's going to go. So I always just, as a basic start, it's just like, what do people do? Just to start off. So what is it that you do?
Well, so I am one of the directors of a digital marketing agency. And so within that, what I do is do a lot of talking to clients, and I essentially look after the marketing side of the business, even though we do have development and websites and things like that as well. My husband takes care of that side. And so I'm really the strategist and the client a person who speaks to the clients and account management, that kind of thing. So I guess you could say it's a strategy role and a caretaker role of people, and making sure that they're happy and that things are going in the right direction, and that we're leading them, where they want to go and taking them on that journey.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many places we could go, because we talked about trust, we talked about yoga, and we talked about sales. So I'll be interested in yoga because, I did yoga many moons ago and really loved it, because of it's almost as though, in my experience, feeling at ease with suffering. So, you're breathing through the uncomfortable position, and then you feel really peaceful afterwards. How do you view yoga, and what is like yoga like for your life, and who should do yoga and who shouldn't?
So for me, I started yoga probably in my mid-20s, and I arrived at it because I actually had been working in the fitness industry as a personal trainer, and I got to a point where I just got sick of gyms, really, and I was looking for something that felt kind of more... Like I would look at people who did yoga and just think, well, that seems like more like strength to me, rather than standing in front of a mirror and just lifting some dumbbells. To be able to put yourself in an inversion into a headstand or a shoulder stand or something like that. That just felt like something I wanted to explore. So and I'd been to yoga classes before at the time, and I ended up arriving on Ashtanga yoga.
Okay.
And Ashtanga is it was actually a studio just near you right here.
Oh yeah, is that the one I thought about? Okay.
And Ashtanga's a different practice in the sense that it has a very defined sequence of postures that you work through. And the reason that I was attracted to that type of yoga was because I came from a physical background, so I wanted something that was a bit more intense. And I got frustrated with other yoga classes where it was always, you do one pose and then the next one, and it changed every week, and I'd be looking around going, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And, it got confusing. Whereas Ashtanga is this set series of postures that you work through. And so when you have that structure to it, it does enable you to kind of explore those postures as you go. And so it's hard, I guess for me, it's been a journey of unfolding and exploration. And what I found was that the poses that I didn't like at the beginning were often the ones that I struggled with, but then eventually over time, as you kind of unwound yourself, you would find space in them and you'd be able to then do them, and then they became very, very enjoyable. Yeah, and so that's why I guess I've stuck with it and still have a practice today. It is always changing, and so every time you go to a class or you practice, your body is different, and so there's always something to be learned by that. And I think with Ashtanga, it's really just a like a gradual unfolding of yourself and exploration of allowing yourself to be you through the physical, as well as then, through sometimes the emotional stuff that comes through.
Ha! Yeah, I didn't know we were going to talk about yoga, but fucking, that's interesting, eh? Because there's a few things in that. It's like, what is passion? You didn't like it there initially, but then when you became confident and understood it more in depth, like how do you apply it in any sense in business? Like when you're facing the mundane or the things that initially the uncomfortable positions in business, and you use yoga do you do the breathe? Do you email apnea? Have you heard of that?
Sorry, what? Email apnea?
Yeah, people forget to breathe when they're on the computer.
Oh, right. No, I haven't heard of that. Yeah, I guess, I mean, in a sense, the breathing side is there, but I don't know if I would necessarily say bring it enough into the daily, bring that physical yoga practice into a day intentionally, but I think it happens just by virtue of the fact that when you've done yoga for quite a while and you're doing it, you do naturally become calmer, and so it's probably helped in sales in a lot of respects. So most of my career has been involved in sales in some capacity, and so that ability to maybe sense and judge what is happening in a situation, you could argue comes from the stillness that you find within a yoga practice. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're doing well to adapt there, because I did, like, I'm a big practitioner of meditation, and I don't always do the consistent sit down, but I always meditate. Like talking to you, I'm meditating, focusing on you and my breath, so I don't freak out, because that's what I do with people over time. So I noticed with sales, I would sell 30% better when I'd meditated in the morning.
Yeah.
So we could go deep on meditation, because it might confuse people. But what is meditation to you, firstly?
Oh, what is meditation to me? I think for me it is 100% an anchor to my day. So usually I would meditate in the morning, and not, well, I should rephrase that, not just the morning, because like you just said then, you can be in a moment and you can meditate. When someone like Roger Federer plays tennis, he's meditating essentially, and so you can do it in a lot of individual moments, but having the regular practice, it definitely starts your day in a great way, So it kind of anchors me in that respect, and I think it just enables you to connect to connect to yourself physically, but sort of mentally and emotionally as well. And I think when you're doing that, you're able to put yourself into a space that's not so head focused and much more comes from the heart much more, which is why I think you get that benefit with sales, because it comes from a place of connection and ability to listen to the person that's in front of you, as opposed to being in your own head and trying to then push and get what you might want out of that certain situation. And I think it's kind of hard to talk about, because I think for me it's hard to talk about. Well, it is, because it's come so normal and natural to me now, and we're talking like 25 years or whatever of doing this,
Veteran.
Yeah, so when things...
Are you enlightened?
No, God, no. But so when you become, you do things so regularly like that, they just start to feel so normal that you sort of think that they're nothing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I was someone asked me, how do I stop overthinking? And I was talking very in an abstract sense, and I couldn't get it to land. Like I sort of see thoughts kind of like a river. You can get in them, and then you get swept down, and it's like snowballs. Or you can observe it as it passes. So what might you say in that scenario? Because what I said to them, I was like, imagine you start to overthink. You're still going to think. The idea is that you're just observing thinking or observing something, so you don't invest in the thinking. Which, when you say to someone, they're like fucking mind-boggled. Like, what the fuck? What do you mean observe your thoughts? What would you advice be for someone that's overthinking, even though you might not be an expert on that? But how would you explain it? Because I failed.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It is a hard concept to explain, and I try to tell that to my kids quite a bit as well, is to try and step back and just watch the mind thinking. And it is very, very hard to understand. But if someone's in a massive state of overthinking, I guess, I'm going to relate it to me as to what I might do, because I think it can be different for everybody. And sometimes it can just be those simple things like getting into nature or getting to exercise or yoga or whatever it is that just can kind of snap you out of whatever's happening in that moment. Obviously, breathing can kind of help there as well. But, everybody has those runaway moments. And then sometimes you just, I know it sounds weird, but you just have to kind of give yourself a bit of a talking to. You literally got to say to yourself, no, I'm not going to let this thought derail me from this goal that I have, or this, whatever the thought's doing to you. You've got to go, no, I stop, because it is just the mind getting onto that treadmill, and going round and round and round. And it's the mind. It's not, so you have to kind of see that and stop it, and then, but it is very, very hard. I must admit, it's very hard to do.
Yeah, we're going to go down a very random route. I'm thinking, what does the thought mean to you?
What does the thought mean?
Because like
creepers.
Yeah, no, these small questions, but you're a practitioner of thought in a sense.
Yeah. What does the thought mean to me? I mean, if you think about it, I guess the thought is like it has. I thought I was going to say an electrical impulse, but it's not quite like that. It's
If you pull this off, I'll be impressed.
Where does it even come from?
Consciousness.
Yeah, consciousness. Yeah. So, I think there's a thought from the mind, which is the ego, more ego-driven, and then there's a thought that comes from an intuitive knowing, right?
Okay.
And those are two separate things, and I personally find those quite hard to distinguish, because I am quite, is it left brain, like logical, rational? I can get quite into that, and I do have to really work to stay in the non-mind, but they sort of come from both places, and yeah, they just, I don't know, I don't know, but they can be, I do believe too that you can think other people's thoughts, and so how you get those moments where you're thinking the same thing as someone else. Well, where did that come from? Who thought that first? Is there a collective mind that kind of goes on?
Well, okay. I'm sorry for this. I genuinely am, because I'm actually fascinated by it now. So consciousness.
Yeah.
So you suggested something there, and there's actually a few things. So in psychology they talk about as a baby, as you're developing, you're just expressing, and there's a minimal amount of ego, so to speak, and then the world gives you an ego as it interprets the way you interact with it, and then you put that in your mind. Mm-hmm. So like you've had these experiences, you internalize those experiences, and you've used that to interpret the world and how you interact with it. So that's how I would think of your ego thought. What do you think of, is consciousness something that's across, like a lot of meditation practitioners, they start to feel a sense of collective feeling and a shared consciousness? What do you think consciousness is? Do we have a soul?
I think so.
You think so?
I don't have any confirmation of that from a personal experience, but it's kind of like, I guess, ghosts and things. I just think that so many people have had some kind of experience of something outside of themselves, that I think there's definitely something to that. As I said, without having a massively direct experience myself with anything, I do believe in that there is a soul. Yeah. Yeah.
So I like looking at like different religions and seeing like threads of symbolism. There seems to be something inherently human about religion, because the story speaks to them, and I think it relates to marketing too, in the sense that there's universal stories about the human condition that people really gravitate towards, and it's the ambiguity. It's not just the, hey, this is what you should think. It's finding yourself within the text, even though I'm atheist. But so you think this is soul. What activities resonate with your soul, and what things deviate from your soul, in the sense that, like, is it good? Is it evil? Is it happiness, sadness? Is it doing good for others? What's soul food?
For me personally?
Yeah, just you. Because we can't...
You can't talk about others, yeah. Yeah, I think it's any of those things that essentially make you feel good and feel energized and alive and joyful. All right, anything that kind of lights you up, I suppose, if you want to say, So for me personally, that is 100% yoga or physical exercise. Like I have to physically move my body, 3 or 4 times a week. Otherwise, it just has that stagnant kind of feel. So that's 100% something for me. As a child, I think it was things like, again, movement, but dancing. That was something that gave me a lot of joy. And
jazz hands or what?
Jazz hands?
That's what you do with jazz hands?
No, it wasn't just jazz. I just like to free fall and do my own thing. I did ballet for a while. I just like dancing, and I still like dancing. Still like to go out and have an old good boogie and stuff every now and then. Other things that would 100% be family, like children and family and things like that. They can really do that for you. And I think just spending time with them, doing fun things, going places or being outside. I would say that nature is certainly, getting out into nature is certainly a place. Sounds very all cliche, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, well, if it's true, then.
But yeah.
If it's cliche, then other people think it. I asked, I've said it a few times to the audience, but I used to help older people with their mobility, and like it was all cold calling and door knocking, and so you'd find them in the worst moments of their life where no one cares about them and they're excruciating pain. And part of what we were selling, it was them being able to achieve what they want in life. So you needed to ask them what they wanted in life. They all said the same thing, which is connection, purpose, and independence, which is like, health and money. So you talked about family. I mean, how do you balance family and, pursuing what you want in life, and then, you got to have a baby physically, so you're out of commission for a while, and now you got to catch up to everyone.
Yeah.
How do you balance those two things of family and career and purpose, or you don't, you just fucking wing it?
Yeah, I suppose, I don't know if I'd say I would wing it. I kind of look at it as you've got those competing forces, and in an ideal situation, they are sort of all balanced, but that doesn't actually work that way. And so you find that at a point in time, one thing has to be slightly more of a priority, and then something will happen, and then it'll change a little bit. Like, say, for example, your child is going through something at school, or there's something on at school that they need attention from, so you have to shift that focus a little bit. So I don't think of it as in like I'm always trying to have it completely balanced. It's more like I'm moving with what needs the attention at the time, but not completely dropping those other things, if that makes sense. Yeah. And also I think, like, I do have this quite a bit with other people I know and other mothers and things who do get very, very sort of stressed out with everything, and I seem to be able to, I don't know if it's compartmentalize things, but if that's the word, but it sort of doesn't bother me. And I can handle quite a bit, and I've got pretty strong energy because I look after myself very, very well, and so they don't bother me. The one thing I'd say, though, if I'm really honest about it, would be just from the business perspective, there simply isn't the time to be working 80 hours a week to grow a massive empire, and that's okay. Because you can still do amazing work. You can still offer a lot of value to people, even in a small business, So yeah, but that would be the one thing. Like, if I didn't have children, I don't want to have a life without children. So I wouldn't want to just have the business. So it's about, just doing, I guess, what you can. You have to be quite focused, I suppose, within the work time that you've got, and just go, okay, well, work's done for the day. I've got my kids to focus on for the next 2 hours, and that is life, And things might take a bit longer from a growth perspective in business or something like that, but that's actually okay. Making peace with that.
Well, I see the biggest differentiator, apart from the limiting beliefs that I see of successful business owners and not, is how they how they prioritize their time and what lever they use. I don't know whose quote it is, but if I have a big enough lever, I can move the world. So if you only had 5 hours, because you said something there, like I build an empire, or not that you would, but like 80 hours to build an empire is what you said. If you only had 5 hours a week to do business stuff, what would you choose? Like, what's the highest leveraged activity in your business?
Wow.
These are easy questions. I don't know about you, but
Well, I want to say what kind of depends, because if I just had 5 hours but I've got a whole lot of clients, well, I would
you can
naturally-
delegate. You can hire.
I can delegate. Okay, right.
Well, that's the whole game. Isn't
Okay,
it?
well, okay. In that case, if it was just me, then in terms of if you're asking me what I would prefer to do with my 5 hours, if I could delegate everything else, it would be being in front of people in those sales type meetings. That's where I don't know. It's like I go into a different zone when I go into those sales meetings or those first pitch meetings, and it's like, anything that's been troubling you in your mind or anything just goes out the window. I want to say I feel like I'm acting, because I sort of do feel like I am, but it's kind of like stepping into this role, and it just all just kind of like clicks. It's like I always think athletes, they
Sales
I watch
athlete.
I watch a lot of tennis, and they get onto the court and they're in the zone. So for me, being in sales is being in the zone. So if I had to pick that 5 hours, it would be in those moments, because that's where I think I am the best, and can offer the most to people. Yeah, and not to say that that's to sell for me, but to be talking to them about how to help their business, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sales is like a dirty word in this business,
It is,
but
yeah.
it's not. Like, good sales is, being a good person. It's a truth teller.
Exactly, and I see sales as an exchange of energy, right? So it's one person, and say me, and person on the other side, and essentially you are listening to each other, and you're exchanging energy across that, and so that's why you get that whole thing of sales with the dirty word, is because I think there's been a real push energy with sales, of people having to push onto you what they want, and then the minute you get that force going one way, of course the person on the other end is going to go, whoa, and they're going to pull back, right? And that's why it feels yuck, because it's not a balanced exchange of energy. Whereas if you've got a person coming to the meeting or the table where they're genuinely trying to help and they're listening, and they're allowing you and giving you that space to do the same, it's a much nicer feeling. And that's how I think sales is changing, and how it needs to change over the next coming years as well. And I'm definitely seeing that in terms of how people interact with each other. But you still get a little bit of the old school stuff in there.
Commission breath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't attest that. Like, I think it's become even more apparent because we're more exposed. Like, imagine if someone in the 20s ripped you off. Maybe you get ripped off 10 times in 5 years or whatever. Now you're instantly getting exposed to people being full of shit. So your bullshit rate is a little stronger.
Totally agree.
So.
Yeah.
It's one thing I find quite tricky. Like, on one hand, you're going on the exploration of understanding them and hopefully solving their problem, but then holding in the back of your mind, but you want to take it a place.
You want to what? Sorry.
You want to direct it somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
How do you balance those two of like being interested in them, but also being aware that you want to go somewhere?
Well, I think you've got to be careful that the place you want to go is the place that's best for them, not for you. Right, so that you're you're almost like, it's like what you're saying before about thoughts and stuff. You've got to take yourself out of the equation and almost be impartial as to even whether you get the deal or not, or get the sale, as long as it's right for the person, and not mind about it and not worry about it. Just go, okay, if we get it, great. If we don't. And always do the best for the customer. So if they're telling you this is the problem, and you're like, okay, this is how I can solve that, you're kind of almost taking them by the hand, I like to look at it, and gently leading them along in a sort of a logical way, so that they can see that what you've proposed or what you're saying is a logical outcome for what they're looking for. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, it's a rare frame. Just if I push a button, because this turns off for a split second, now it turns on again, so you don't miss anything. But I usually tell people before it starts. That's a unique frame. Like people can say they do that, but to actually be able to do that, especially, you got pressures of family, pressures of money. How did you earn that mindset, or what has helped? Because usually the extreme is, I want to help this person, so I don't sell them at all. I don't feel like I have self-worth. The price is to, keep it low. And then, you get those sort of hippie, and then you get the cutthroat commission breath.
Yeah, absolutely. You do. Yeah, good question. Well, when I've been selling it in an environment where it's not your own business and you've got sales targets to meet, you're probably at the end of the spectrum of you haven't got time to be concerned about whether you feel good or how you feel. You've got targets to hit, and if you don't hit those targets, you're going to lose your job, right? So that probably does something in that respect. And when I think back to when I have been in those environments, I definitely physically almost felt more of a pressure and less genuine in some respects, unless of course you 100% believe in the product that you're selling, and then it's actually kind of easy, right? And I think what happens with people who are selling, say themselves, if they're a coach or their own business, you do get quite caught into that self-worth thing and, am I enough, all the rest of it. And in terms of how you get out of that, I don't know, it's like, I think you just have to put yourself aside and do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. You just have to. You've got to like drop that stuff, that junk that you've got at the door, and just put on the sales cloak and go and do it, and just do it. Otherwise, you're not gonna, you're really gonna struggle.
You talked about that. It's not that I'm a different person, but I get in the zone.
Yeah.
So, what does that person think like that's different from the person that's not in the zone?
I suppose when I'm in that space,
you're doing well with these questions. They're so out the gate. Like like
it's like I don't usually plan. I do plan sales meetings because I actually, funnily enough, do also like structure. So I'm this weird combination of liking structure and process, but also liking to be quite free within it. But what the structure and the process does is gives you confidence and a framework to work within. And when you have that, so you have a structure, and so you might jump around within that, but you know what that structure is, so you kind of know what you need to cover off, if that makes sense. So I can be quite planned and organised when it comes to those meetings, but there's also a lot of working and answering questions quite intuitively. So I'm almost in a space where I'm not actually thinking, and the answers come to me in the moment, if that makes sense.
That does.
Yeah. And I think another thing too is that I'm actually really genuinely interested in people and their business, and so I ask a lot of questions because I like to understand their business. And this probably came from one of my sales roles when I first moved up here, was selling rubbish bins.
Oh yeah,
waste services.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I literally door knocked around majority of East Auckland, East Tamaki, and things like that, and day in day out for about 2 years. And part of that role was because it was rubbish. I had met a lot of operations people, and I got to see a lot of factories, and it was fascinating. Because they'd show you how this little piece of such and such made this other product into something, and I was like, oh wow, I never actually thought about how that happened. So that kind of sparked this big interest in how businesses actually work. And so I think when I'm talking to people, I'm always curious about how does their business work and where are they at, and kind of understanding their process, what they've currently done, and even their mindset a little bit as well, and how they're approaching things.
What was that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Like the easiest way to be interesting is to be interested.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you got your curiosity around that. Do you, it's something I had to learn. Like I used to sort of mirror people and probably be manipulative because I was uncomfortable. So I just do what was needed for them to build rapport with me instead of finding a way to be interested in what they're saying. And so I've worked on that.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's because, were you sort of taught to do it that way? Did you have sales training?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the problem. And so, before the rubbish bin situation, I'd worked in fitness and ended up in sales quite early on. And, when I started working in this gym, and they were like, oh, we want you to do sales. And I'm like, why? And then they're like, because we think you'd be good at it. And I went, okay. So even back then, we had the sales training in gyms, and it was just awful. And it was all about these tricks that you would do and the manipulation and what you'd say, and you had to use this diagram and write out the stuff on the page, and it was all weird. And so lots of sales training I did since that, and even in corporate sort of environments, was sort of the same. And when I look back, I think that it taught you to sell in a way that didn't feel natural to anybody, So that's why you felt shit and then didn't get the sale, because the other person was feeling shit too, right? So you had this funny situation where people were teaching you shit and then people were feeling crap because of that. And that's been the problem. And I think it's changed a little bit though. There's this move to consultative selling and that sort of thing. And when I heard what that was, I went, oh, well, that's what I've been doing for 20 years.
They caught up finally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is my take anyway.
No, it's a fair take. Like, I essentially work for one of the largest face-to-face marketing company no one's ever heard of because they sell everyone else's shit. So, like, we were helping all the major charities. And I didn't care about the product, which is fucked because it's charity, but I was just like, admin and where all the money goes and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, and we had to memorize this pitch, and we said to everyone, it's helpful because it's scalable and repeatable and you can teach people and you can reach a certain point, but it's not good selling. And I used to, for the sad moments, had to think of my dead dog so I could have the right tonality.
Oh no.
And you're playing this character all day and you're doing all these tactics and you're getting rejected by hundreds of people just so you could sell, stop 40 and sell to, 4 of them. So have you ever tried to teach selling? You're obviously talking about how it's, not good. How do you teach it?
That's a really good question as well. I've never tried to teach it. I've not been in that place
well, you're
of
gonna
needing
have to
to
scale.
be. Yeah, I know, exactly. So I don't know how I'm going to approach that then.
Just stay lifestyle business, huh?
Yeah, well, no, definitely not. Like I guess it goes back to those like first of all, whoever's going to be doing that role needs to have the passion for what you absolutely do. And I think kind of to understand your vision and what you're trying to achieve and be quite aligned with that. And then I think it comes down to a lot of those interpersonal skills really around ability to connect, but in a genuine way, and in a way that's not kind of flashy or kind of rah-rah sort of thing, So those kind of more of those, and listening is essentially a big one as well, I think. And then you have to kind of, I guess, give them the framework and the process to be able to then succeed with that. But yeah, so yes, maybe it's some more of those softer skills, I think, than some of those other things.
So what's your sales process at the moment? Like, how do you acquire clients, and what's your part of? Are you still door knocking, or what are you, using ads? Cold
bit
calling?
of everything, really. Yeah. So so there's various ways. One of them, the biggest ways, is referrals, which most businesses are the same. I do cold call.
Oh, yeah?
Much to my disgust. I really wish I didn't have to. But actually, I'm quite good at it.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, and
cool.
I usually get quite a lot of good feedback. So I am doing that at the moment. And it's people have a lot of bad vibes about cold calling and things as well. But in New Zealand, there's a lot of businesses that are just not on social media to start with. So I do a little bit of that. And also it's a way to connect with people who are the people you want to work with as well. But it needs to be supplemented with other things. So we do have some plans in place. We're just going through a website refresh, and this is why we haven't done a lot of actual marketing, because our website is just not in the place that I want it to be. So that's underway at the moment, and then we will start to layer on the marketing. I will be soon more active on LinkedIn. I've gone in and out of LinkedIn a little bit, but I'm just going through some content creation and asset collection and stuff for that too. That will go into our process as well, probably, and so we'll be building up on LinkedIn and possibly Instagram, and maybe look at Facebook as well, because it is quite cost effective.
Yeah,
still, yeah.
Got a little politician there on the last part there.
Yeah. But I mean, the other thing though too is that the way that when it comes to sales, so this is going to sound even more weird, I suppose.
Oh yeah, good.
But
safe space.
Yeah. It's business growth is I don't want to get too new agey here, but it's all about your energy, okay? So, and I can tell you that from experience, because if I'm in a good mindset and I've been looking after myself and I'm feeling really happy and positive and energetic and my energy is high and I make those cold calls, I'm going to get better results, okay? If I'm flat and if I'm like, oh, this is crap, I can't do this, or, the world's shit or whatever, or you're buying into whatever else is going on, you don't have the same energy, so you're not magnifying that out to the world. And so what I see repeatedly is that people who have the good, strong energy and are taking the actions that are aligned to where they want to go will get results. It might not be from that Facebook ad that you put out there, but then suddenly a referral will come from someone random that you hadn't thought about for 10 years. You know, it's just kind of how it works. And so when I think about marketing, sure, this is probably not a very popular idea, but you know, but you know, you can look at, okay, we did this Facebook ad and we got 4 leads, and yeah, you did. But the simple act of doing that, as well as and you know, you say your SEO, as well as your Facebook, your LinkedIn, posts and things like that. This all collectively leads to an expansion of your energy and what you're putting out to the world, and that is what then attracts in, and that's why you get the results. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. No, so the point is not to try not to stop doing anything. But still evaluating whether something's actually giving you value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I've been very aware of the energy I've been putting out for a little while now, because I've been calling people and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." Like, it was something like every 10th call, someone would know me either from content or something, and then they're like, "How are you doing, man?" I'm like, "Well, good. I know I'm self-sabotaging and whatnot, but yeah, that energy thing really hits home." I find it, I do always seem to find it strange, because I went on a tear calling a whole lot of agencies that, you know, they're like the goats of marketing, so to speak, but they don't market. Yeah. I never got that.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's your 2 cents? Hot take, surely. I
disagree. Well, I think there's definitely an element of the builder's house is never done. So you're so busy just delivering client work and getting stuff out the door that it's hard to find the time for it. So that is definitely one. Secondly, if you're getting quite a few referrals, you could be growing anyway. It's just that you don't see it. And for some of the companies that have got a very strong brand name, who maybe have some good organic ranking, are kind of known, they're going to get inquiries anyway, so they're getting them kind of organically. But that's because they've done the work through either doing good work or perhaps previous efforts, and they've sort of got to a point of, what's the word I'm looking for here, they've got to sort of a size and a point where it's sort of self-fulfilling, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. It's interesting, eh? Well, I think the best marketing is a good product in a way, but you still got to, people aren't aware that you have a product.
No, well, exactly. There, I do know of agencies that do have sales teams. Like, there's several big agencies that have a team of telesales that call up, and I know that because our clients get called by them sometimes, and I just can see that they've got salespeople on the ground. So there is that. So and when I do the cold calling, people do say, "Oh, yeah, you're the 10th person that's called today," kind of thing, and I'm like, "Oh yeah." So yeah.
But even then, like, I wonder if, like, business like, what do you think is the least, like, the greatest opportunity, I guess, for like a cold outreach where not many people are doing it because it's too hard or too scary or too challenging? Or do you see, because cold calling, there's a bit of it, there's very few people that do it good though. Door knocking a business, there's the people that ask for charity and stuff, but I got this job from door knocking it, which is interesting. As a financial advisor, where do you think this sort of underpriced attention is, either with cold outreach or with marketing? Or
I don't know. I'm probably supposed to say something about AI here, aren't I?
If you want, wherever. Usually it's where the people are afraid of being judged, or where it takes the most of the effort.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think that there's necessarily any kind of one way for any business, and I'm definitely a believer in, you have to test these things and try them, and so it's almost like, don't rule out anything. I think what I see with some clients who are in the software, like SaaS space, they're sometimes quite reasonably big companies, and they don't have a sales team. And so, if you're in that situation where you are trying to grow and you're growing through, say, referrals, you've got some paid search or maybe some paid social or something on, you don't have a sales team, an outreach team. Well, to me, the biggest opportunity there is to fill a sales role and have that person, in an outreach capacity or posting on LinkedIn or whatever it is that you want them to do, that they're, investing into to bring in those leads. For other people, like, we get quite a lot of people who come to us who have been burned by marketing in the past. It's a big one, and are not doing anything. So you know, the opportunity for them is like, okay, well, you know, we do not just anything, but just, you know, deciding where to start from. You know, what's the best place to start for this particular business? You know.
How do you console that? Like, one of the ones I've heard, like, kind of like an objection handle. I imagine you'll be all authentic, caring, like you said before. They would talk about, you know, are you still with the girl that you dated in school, or guy, whoever you're talking to? And you're like, well, no. Well, did you give up on dating? You know what I mean? And it's a bit of an interesting thing. Like what's another quote? Like, marketing works the same way that a plane always flies. You know, like marketing works, but you just got to be, you know, you still got to fly it.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with that at all, but how do you navigate that concern of, you're just another bullshit agency, you know? I hear it a lot. So.
Yeah, I know. And like I see on LinkedIn every day, probably twice a day, people bashing agencies as well. And yeah.
We're different.
Hey?
We're different. Well, I guess your care would be.
Different. Yeah, but you still got to get results.
Yeah.
You know? But I guess the caring thing is definitely something. Like, we've had clients who have come to us, have just said, I just feel like our last agency, they were juniors and they didn't really care about us, you know? So that is one, but you do still have to get the results. You still have to be able to spend their money and show some kind of return for it, you know? And if you're not doing that, then, you know, that's nobody's in a good situation when that happens.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what do you use? What are you finding is effective in your warehouse of getting results?
Depends which kind of industry or type of business
B2B
that you're
service
about.
Or whatever.
They're probably to be honest, I find B2B service probably the hardest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's kind of some of the things that we've been talking about. So with B2B service, so your products are kind of the easier ones because there's kind of a demand thing there as well, you know, whether it's retail or B2B, there's a demand. With service, it's a little bit different. And this is where I think with the B2B service companies, it's kind of like there needs to be a mix of sales and marketing. If you've just got one going, you've only got sales but not marketing, or just sales but not marketing, you can slow your growth down in that respect. But what I personally think that B2B service companies probably need to be looking at these days is things like, you know, the old demand creation strategies that everyone's talking about on LinkedIn at the moment. And so, having a social strategy that involves either them or someone in their company, you know, being a leader and posting onto LinkedIn. I mean, sure, amplify that with paid social as well. So, you know, kind of spreading that message to the bigger audience. You can still get results from, you know, some paid search, Google paid search. Sometimes for service businesses and B2B, I've never seen incredible results from that. But you get you can get some leads through it, but it's a place to start, but it's not an end point. You've got to do that other bigger market stuff. And I think content strategies, whether that's, you know, organic posts on social or other types of content that are then you know, distributed, that's huge as well. Interesting.
Yeah, I asked that question for selfish reasons, really, because I've struggled with the fact that people feel comfortable. I help them make content. They enjoy it. They're happy with it. I don't like it. Just not because of perfectionism.
You don't like the content?
No, I don't like my service.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I want to make the money. That's the only reason I started the marketing company, is to learn how to reach more people and scale a way to help people live fulfilling lives. That's the only reason I did it. So I was. There's an analogy with a hot dog stand. Like, would you? And this relates. It's a bit all over the place, but I'm coming together. Have you heard of the hot dog stand? Like, would you rather have a great hot dog, a starving crowd, or incredible marketing? The answer is you want to have a starving crowd, because it doesn't matter what you're selling, because they want it. And I think B2B service is a starving crowd. And then I thought about, what am I good at? Well, I'm good at helping people feel comfortable to express who they really are and how they feel in a way that people consume. So I was like, well, okay, we could do their personal brand.
Yeah.
And then taking that and putting into a Facebook lead campaign, and then nurturing and calling the leads, because that's another thing that I do. And then just doing booked appointments. Because like if I just went around and we met over the phone and I was like, I'll do your content if you still want me to do your content, happy to do your content. But that's what where I want to go. But if you're saying it's not possible to get leads, or is it just the sales component of it? Like you need a salesperson because you're selling the intangible and you're selling the person, so you need to. Like it just a point and click isn't going to work. You're going to actually need to tell a story.
Yeah.
Is that what the hardest thing is, and not many agencies tell stories, or what do you think goes wrong with it? I'll be less selfish in the next questions.
Yeah. I don't know. So can you just clarify exactly what your question is then?
Yeah, what about making marketing B2B service makes it so hard, or that there's not many examples of success? Because nearly every person I speak to, they say, marketing doesn't work.
Yeah. What is it that makes it so hard? I don't know.
I can tell you what I think, if that helps. But if
go
you
for
don't
it.
understand.
Let me just think about it.
Because you're selling an intangible thing. It's like partly most of them grow through acquisition and through referral. And it's because what they're selling isn't the how, they're selling the outcome. And how do you tell that? How do you tell the story of, hey, this is the outcome that you're going to achieve? You need social proof. And then how do you sell the intangible? Because it's an interaction. It's a service.
Yeah.
It's very abstract.
Yeah, and I guess that's why a lot of B2B service end up leveraging things like case studies, because they're just showing, the possibility of what they have achieved for somebody else.
Because you're B2B service.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, exactly.
So how are you going to market yourself?
Yeah, well, I mentioned those things before. So it's through... So what we're going to do, so we've got the website, okay, there'll be content creation, and that'll be done probably via myself as a personal brand, but sort of under the company through LinkedIn. So that's to kind of get that audience awareness and reach. There's other things that I probably need to start doing more, which is like networking. Then there is content, so creating content, blogs or podcasts or videos or whatever you want to your target market to that. And then... a little bit of paid search, but again, like I said, it's not the thing that's going to turn you into a $10 million company, I don't think.
Interesting.
But it's the combination of all of those things, and then potentially a sales cold calling strategy on the back of that as well. So that's what I'm saying. I think you kind of have to do all of those things and have that continuously build upon over time, right? And then your reputation has to come into it as well, I guess so, and this is why I think the content strategy is important. So to your question around it being an intangible, people have to see. The idea is that they see through your content that you understand the challenges that they have, and that builds the trust for them to then go, okay, I'm going to trust you to work with me to help me do this, to grow my business. That's the point of that content, is to kind of build that trust and that relationship with people.
Yeah, someone's saying the best copy is, writing is helping people understand. Copy is showing that they're understood. And that, I think, probably that's been the biggest mistake of my content journey, has been with finance, because that's how I grew my business. I didn't do that good a job with the finance part, but clients would call me.
Right, yeah.
Which was cool, with no marketing spend. So
yeah.
And I was talking about the what and the how. Instead of focusing on, that I understand how they're feeling. And it's interesting, It's like, do you go broad with the content, so you reach a lot more people, so then you have more upside, whatever, is it called CPM? Yeah, more views. Or do you go more niche and speak to their feelings?
Yeah. Well, I think I heard this guy talk about this in an interesting way, which I thought was quite nice. And he was... I think you do have to go a little bit niche, right? So, like, say, for example, what we're just talking about, the B2B service conversation is slightly different to, say, a retailer who needs, traffic to their website to get people to buy the products. It's a different conversation, and you can't necessarily, I think, show that you meet both of those needs through the same piece of content. So I think that picking, say, one, let's just say it was retailers, and putting your content or your business skew towards that that type of business does make life a lot easier, because you don't have to think then, oh, do I do B2B content today, or do I do retailer content, am I marketing a service or a product, It gives you focus as well, right? It doesn't mean that that say that B2B service company or a B2B retailer, for example, doesn't find value in what you wrote. And say it was a piece around, say, for example, customer journey. And I know that the customer journey for retailers is going to be slightly different to, say, B2B. But there might still be value in that piece of content. So the person in the B2B can read it and go and learn something from it, and you've given them something that they didn't have beforehand. Sure, you're not going to get paid for it, but it doesn't matter, because what you've done has, for lack of a better word, touched somebody else or given them something. And like I said, they're never going to become a customer. They're not your target market. It does not matter. You've kind of fulfilled a greater purpose in terms of serving the world to a bunch of people, regardless of the fact that they're not going to become your customer. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's saying what that does. Like, I think of, I don't know how many views, let's say over 7 million views, and you see it as like, you measure your success, this many people have viewed, this many people haven't. And imagine if you're in a auditorium with 200 people in there and you had 200 views on your video, and then that compounding. So if you're doing, let's say, 10 videos a week and you're getting 200 views, maybe you get 100,000 on one of them. And how that compounds over time, where you're just building this equity and reciprocation in the market. And even though, like, there was a famous real estate agent that he was on TikTok early, and he sold something like a $50 million house because a kid saw her TikTok and showed it to dad. And they bought that house. So the person, you might not be selling to them, but they're going to tell everyone.
Yeah.
And then if they've got an easy way to share what you do in a way where they look good by sharing it, it's a different kilo of fish as opposed to you being out there cold calling.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the reason, that's what I'm saying about content and that personal brand thing, and having that presence and being regular with your content, is it does exactly that. And I just saw a post today, actually, that someone that said that, they are, when they look at their LinkedIn posts, they've had very little engagement and not even many views. But then when they've talked to people, they've been told that, oh yeah, I've been sharing all of your posts in our Slack group, or I've told my manager about all of your posts, examples like that. So just because something doesn't look like it's being looked at doesn't mean that people aren't actually receiving it and finding value in it. And this is what I mean about the compounding kind of effect, and almost that kind of the amplification, or the kind of the magnetic kind of spread of things as well, And that can only happen when you've got consistency with the content and the messaging, and the frequency at which you're posting stuff.
It is crazy. Like, I've done it for 4 years now, and for the first few, I was doing 70 pieces of content a week. And you think about, like, I never, because I wasn't too good at the conversion component of it and creating a clear offering that people know what the fuck I'm doing, and then being consistent to that. And I would just write about psychology and some crazy stuff. But the impact on that, one, being able to call anyone and they be willing to help in some way. I'll call someone in a network. I maybe haven't quite met them. I remember going to, I don't go to networking events because I feel uncomfortable. I've forced myself to do it. But I went to one. And the first 4 people I walked in, they're like, oh, hey, Ryan, how's your 30-day challenge going? Oh, I've seen you on Instagram. Right? I was like, what the fuck? But I haven't pieced that puzzle of, turning that into consistent business.
Yeah.
What do you think is where people go wrong in terms of the balancing between doing good and making money?
Well, are you asking for the sale?
Nah.
Okay.
That could be it.
So you're producing this content, you're putting it all out there, and then nothing.
Yeah, I just keep giving.
It's like going to a sales call and me explaining everything about what we do, and sitting there and then saying nothing, and you just go, okay.
Yeah, not closing.
Like, what do I do next? And I don't say anything.
True.
So
yeah, okay.
Maybe there's an element of
maybe
that, right?
ask for business. Yeah.
But again, that kind of can trigger people in a lot of ways. But you can do that. There's ways to do that nicely and gently. You could have things like, if you wanted to start small, like courses, or sign up to, something, it's only $10 or whatever. You wanted like just a gentle thing to get you going, and then you gradually build up from there,
Yeah, I was just watching Alex Mosey, 99. He gives 99% of the time, 1% he asks, which means that 1 to 3 posts a month is an ask.
Yeah.
So I never asked. That makes complete sense. You've made it. It's 55 minutes.
Anyway, excellent.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about marketing. Where do you think businesses are going wrong with marketing, or what do you think is the biggest 80-20 that you bring into a company?
Where do I think they're going wrong? Well, for the companies that we see, where they're going wrong is that they haven't been doing any, or what they've been doing has just been, like things like, oh yeah, we're doing Google ads, and then you find out they've just been running a brand campaign, so doing the wrong things. I think one other, it's really interesting when you start to work with business owners as well, is that you start to see what's holding the business back mentally and emotionally for them, so I think from what I see now, I personally think that most business owners really need some kind of coaching or some kind of not necessarily a coach, but someone to kind of help them on all facets of the business, because that's what true growth actually is, when you can kind of get all those things going. Like we see big companies who completely disorganized, but doing really well, and then other companies who just need a kind of a few tweaks in a few areas to kind of get everything rolling on the right tracks. So there's that. Like I said, I think it's things like, for some companies, so they have a small marketing function or campaign, but no sales team, and they probably need a sales team. So thinking about those elements of the business. And I think where else New Zealand businesses go wrong is just simply underinvesting in things like content and in their marketing, expecting, say, Google or organic or SEO to be the thing that gives them the business, and it's just not the way the world works anymore. There's too many other platforms out there that people have people's attention, and you can't just do that. So kind of like, I guess, a singular strategy where they've got one thing and relying on it, and actually they need to be going beyond that. Yeah. There's probably some of the things I see as the major blockers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this has been arguably one of the most random podcasts, all because of me. Just yoga, meditation, what is a thought?
I thought you did a nice job of kind of bringing that then round to business and marketing eventually.
Yeah, well, I mean, all it is people just need to recognize that, hey, we're not having a steady flow of business. Who can help us? Do we trust this person?
Yeah.
Like, what else you got to tell them?
Yeah.
And then if you don't deliver, then, maybe you lost a few thousand or whatever it is. Better than your current strategy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, which is to go back to do nothing again, right?
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I hope this turns out all right.